You know what, I know it's Friday evening, almost 10 o'clock. Folks are tired. Been a long week. But while they're doing this, y'all, this is the part of the program where people get mad at me. Just do me a favor. I'm just gonna ask your indulgence. Anybody who is older or more senior than 29 years old, please just stand up. If you're in the sanctuary and you're older than 29 years old, just stand up for me for a minute. Okay, just stand up. So remain standing. Remain standing. If someone is too old to stand up, help them up, please. Help them up. Don't leave them in the seat. Now, anyone who is 29 years or younger, will you raise your hand? Just raise your hand. Raise your hand up. If you're 29 years or younger. Now, if you are standing, I want you to stay seated and raise your hand. If you are standing, will you please walk over real quickly to someone who is raising, keep your hand up. Walk over to someone who is raising their hand. Please walk over to them now. Start walking. And I want you to look them in the eye. There aren't that many here. I want you to look them in the eye, and I want you to say, "I'm sorry." I want you to say, "I'm sorry." I want you to apologize. Okay, now sit down. Because my talk is about to explain to you what you just apologized for. Over the past 30 years, we've borne witness, those of us who stood up, we've borne witness to watching 300,000 incarcerated individuals explode over the past 30 years to over 2.4 million. We've borne witness over the past 30 years to watching 1.7 million children growing up in households where a parent is incarcerated. And we've been watching it, and you know why? We've been watching it because we allowed it to happen. Now, it's not that comfortable to think about it that way. And it bothers some people to say it that way, but whether you think it was a nice little heroin shot or a little smoke from the crack pipe or maybe a little drink or maybe it was your own mental intoxication or your own fear or ego or pride, but something stopped us from actually stopping the individual that kicked down our door and started stealing black and brown men right before our eyes. And what's interesting about that is that we'll come together in gatherings like this, and we'll run down all the things we need to do, and then we don't do any of them. And when I was at Harvard Law School, I wish that I had a professor like Professor Gloria. I mean, she just gave a great constitutional law seminar. And when I was growing up, you know, Terry, my father was a psychiatrist. And what was interesting about growing up with a psychiatrist's father is that every time I came home, I felt like he was trying to psychoanalyze me. And every time I tried to do something and get away with it, he'd always say, "I'm going to hook you up to the lie detector. You better be telling me the truth." So yes, I need therapy. But what's interesting about that is I think Terry's exactly right. We all do, because although we don't like to hear it, we all are responsible for this so-called mass incarceration crisis. I like to call it a hyper-incarceration crisis. On Tuesday, this book, it's called Letters to an Incarcerated Brother. It's my 5th book. It was published and it came out, and What's interesting about this book is that after having published 4 New York Times best-selling books in a row and being under contract to publish whatever I wanted to publish, I was told by my publishing company that they would not publish this book. I was told by my publishing company that I was publishing it for a population that wouldn't support it, publishing it for a population that wouldn't read it, and they are a for-profit company and they don't provide charity books. So although I had a contract in place to provide them a 5th book, and although they had made nice profits off my previous 4, they came to me and said the only way we would publish this book is if you rework your contract. So I reworked my contract because I wanted to get the book published. And then I submitted the book. Took me a number of years, a great deal of research, a great deal of work, getting contributors that are much smarter than I am to contribute to the book, because in my books, I'm never the expert. I'm just the man on a journey trying to figure it out for myself, and hopefully the reader likes to go on that journey with me. And when I do something like this, I attempt to include numerous voices. So in this book, we have voices like Russell Simmons, we have voices like Dr. Ben Chavis, we even have a voice like Michael Steele, we have a voice like Lemon Anderson, an amazing spoken word artist, and Lupe Fiasco, and even a Harvard neuroscientist, Dr. Rudolph Tanzi, who published a book called Superbrain with Deepak Chopra, where he talks about the reptilian brain and how many of us are making reptilian brain level choices, and how we can actually train our mind to be elevated, to actually operate in a more conscious way like Terry was talking about earlier. Yet most of us want to keep thinking about what we need to do when we actually haven't done anything except watch people steal young black and brown men right from under our eyes. So, I turned in a book. My contract said that I was supposed to turn in a book. You know, when you have these publishing contracts, they put the length of the book in the contract. And my publisher told me that in the contract it said it should be a book of approximately 60,000 words. And so, but when I turned in my version of this book, it was 120,000 words. That's because the magnitude of this issue was so vast, and I knew that it's so difficult to get a book published on this issue that I had to put everything in. I wasn't going to leave anything out. And I got an email back a half hour after I submitted the book saying the publishing company rejects the book. Now, I don't know how fast y'all can read, but it's extremely difficult to read 120,000 words in 30 minutes. So, a problem ensued. Lawyers were called. Steps were taken. The book got published. The first letter in this book it's reprinted right here. This is one of the first letters I received of the hundreds I've received from incarcerated young men and women. And just to paint the picture, I was flying somewhere, and you get a lot of fan mail and people ask you for a picture or sign this or do this, and so I do this on flights sometimes when I'm there, and I'll sign this and put it and give it back to the folks in my office, and they can sign and send it. And so I'm on the plane, and I pull out this particular letter, and I really wasn't expecting it at the time, and I'm going to read it as exactly how it's written, so you understand. It reads, "Dear Hill Harper, my name is Brian, and I'm 16 years old, and I'm in jail. I can't use a computer, so I can't email you. I wrote these to someplace in New York, and I hope and pray the facts these letters to you or give it to you some way, because I really want to talk to you about a lot of stuff, Hill. I just finished reading your book, Letters to a Young Brother. It was the best book I ever read in my life, and I mean that. So if Penguin Inc. give you these letters, I would like to have your home address so we can correspond back and forth to each other. Like you said in your book, many young people don't have a role model. I didn't have one. That's why I'm in jail. But I have one now, and his name is Hill Harper. I really hope Penguin Inc. give you these letters first class. And if you do get it, can you please write me back? I read in your book that you play in CSI New York. I like that show, and I also like CSI Miami, but I do like your show a little better. That's good. That's good. I also read you went to school with Barack Obama. If you can tell him I said hello. If I was at home and old enough, I'd vote him president, but I'm only 16 years old, and I'll tell you why I'm in jail and how much time I have if you write me back, or even if you get my letter, which I hope you do. Well, that's everything for now. Hope you write back. Your friend and brother, Brian. So at that moment, I started imagining this young brother, Brian, who's in jail, having obviously not more than a 4th grade level reading or education level. I started thinking about, okay, did Brian fail us or do we fail him? He's 16 years old, 4th grade level writing. And then I also started thinking about, well, how long did it take Brian to get through my book? How many times did he have to read over and over, because it was written above a 4th grade reading level, which clearly he has. And then I started thinking about the fact that in most of our urban centers, we are allowing our schools to undereducate our young people, and we're having a 50 to 60 to 70% dropout rate of young black men. Yet what's interesting about that, if we lay the graph of incarceration rate over that exact same dropout rate per community, they almost mirror each other 1-to-1. Yet I then started thinking about the fact that, I own some businesses, and I own a restaurant in Los Angeles, and the government comes by my restaurant every once in a while. And if I only had a 50 to 60 or 70% success rate in serving food, they would shut me down. But they continue to allow our schools to function over and over and over and over and over with the 50, 60, 70% failure rate. You know how they put the little letters in front of restaurants? Yet we stand by and watch it happen. And so I started to feel sick to my stomach, because I started to feel like I was responsible for Brian. I was responsible for all the Brians out there and all the Briannas out there, because I stood by and just allowed it to happen. I stood by and let Brian end up with a 4th grade reading level. I didn't even know what he had done yet. Now, fast forward about 6-7 years later, Brian and I, we talk on the phone a lot. He's still in prison. We don't know when he's getting out. But what Brian and I have been working on is a lot of the things that I talk about in here, and it relates in many ways to what Professor Gloria and Terry had to say, and I hate to say it, y'all, but the reason why we don't see impact in this area is because we are not organized. It's because we do not actually plan, because we don't actually have a blueprint. I call it being an active architect of your own life. I look at it the way an architect looks at building a structure. They start with a blueprint or a plan. They're so meticulous and thorough with that plan that they know the size of the tiles in each and every bathroom. They know if they're penny tiles, 2-inch tiles, 4-inch tiles. Yet we will go around and talk about, what needs to happen? You know what we need to do? This is a problem, isn't it? Yes, it's a problem, yet we still don't have a plan. I love the fact that Professor Gloria talked about the Constitution. When you actually write down a constitution, or that Scientific Soul Sessions just said that they actually have a manifesto, a blueprint, a constitution, a manifesto, they're all the same thing. They are a concrete plan that is written out. Whatever area we want to have impact in, we have to be that thorough, that meticulous, because you know what? The forces that are against us are even more thorough, because they created a plan 30 years ago called the war on drugs. They created a plan 30 years ago that says, let's start defunding schools. They created a plan over 30 years ago between, we can even look at the data between 1990 and the year 2000, we had over $17 billion cut of federal spending from public housing build-outs. A 67% decrease. Over that same period, we had over $22 billion more spent on building federal prisons. So in that 10 years, you can see and just say that the number one housing build out for the urban poor were prisons. Yet we fast forward to now and say, how did we get here? We got here because people like me, folks my age and older, and even a little younger, stood by and let it happen. Stood by and didn't create a new plan or manifesto. Stood by and didn't decide to be as thorough as the forces that were against us. Stood by and allowed them to kick in the door and steal young black and brown men. So when I think about the Bryans and Briannas that I have failed, think about the ones you failed. Some people would say that we got a little too comfortable. Some people would say that don't blame the victim. It's not our fault. We just didn't know any better. We never learned those lessons. We weren't able to go to Columbia or Harvard or John Jay. But you know what? I think that those excuses don't really work anymore. Because at this point, you can go to the local library, click a few buttons, and have more information at your fingertips than any student at Harvard. At this point, you can reach almost anyone that you seek information from. If you want to put together what I call your own personal board of directors, much like Terry was talking about, you can piece it together through people that are dead. Paul Robeson's on my board of directors, and I never met him, because if I had, I'd be pretty special. He's on my board of directors because I can read autobiographies, biographies. I can understand the types of choices he made, the types of actions he took, and I can apply them, because that's all a role model does. That's all someone on your board does, is they help you make decisions. And you decide what level of risk you're willing to take. Most of us aren't willing to take much. When I created this cover, I wanted to test people's subconscious notions of imprisonment and what that meant, and whether they think I was behind bars or I was on the other side of the bars looking in. The vast majority of people come up to me and say, Hill, why'd you put yourself behind bars? But I'm in a suit. Why would I have a suit on if I was in prison? But they still don't see past that, in part because we are trapped. And this may not go over with much popularity, but I'm just going to say it anyway. I love Professor Gloria. Don't get me wrong, so I'm not bashing the idea of learning your history. But I really don't care about your personal history. I don't care where you're from. I don't care how hard you had it. I don't care if you grew up rich, poor. I don't care if you're a straight A student, straight F student. I don't care if you've been on heroin, crack, smack, if you did the cheese that the lady spoke about earlier. Doesn't really matter. Because every decision you made in your life up until now has led you to be in this sanctuary at this exact time. Every decision I've made in my life up until now has led me to be here right now at the exact same time. So the past doesn't matter. What matters is, what are we going to do next? How are we going to organize? Who's going to be the person that stands up and says, I want to create the manifesto. I want to write the blueprint. I want to be the one that's so meticulous, so thorough, so specific about a plan that I'm going to impact this one area of this specific problem. Who wants to do that? Fantastic. We need more plans. We need more blueprints. One of my favorite quotes about the future goes something like this. The future does not belong to those who are fearful of bold projects and new ideas, but rather the future belongs to those who can blend passion, reason, and courage. And this is the interesting part. Who can blend passion, reason, and courage into a personal commitment to the great ideals and enterprises of American society. The great ideals and enterprises of American society. I would suggest to you that perhaps the number one way that we can help folks that come out on parole, probation, is economic help. The number one way is for you to start a business, a successful business, and therefore you can employ people that come out of prison. The number one thing that ends up sending us back to prison and ends up cranking up our recidivism rates happens to be the fact that we can't find legitimate employment. Start a business, become an employer, and hire brothers and sisters coming out of prison. Having a new website built this next week, and a brother who is incarcerated is building my website. I hope it's good. But the beautiful thing about it is, if it is good, then I can recommend him to so many other people and try to help seed his business. And then if his business grows, he can then start employing other brothers and sisters and training them in web design, web development. The only way that's going to work is that if he has a business plan. The future does not belong to those who are fearful or false evidence appearing realful of bold projects and new ideas, but rather the future belongs to those who can blend 3 words, passion. All passion means is energy. So many of us get up in the morning, we're tired. It's like, I hate my job. I hate my boss. I hate my bills. We don't jump up. We don't do what Scientific Soul Sessions asks us to do. We don't yell and scream and actually get up a little bit and decide that this stuff makes me angry, that I actually want to do something about it. Physics proves to us that the only way you can move a mass in stasis, that means something that is not moving, is to apply some measure of energy. So if we actually want to see results in this area, if we want to see change, then we have to apply some measure of energy. Yet most of us don't even want to raise our voice. So that's the first word, passion, which means energy. The second word in that quote is reason. And reason is an interesting thing. It's kind of an old-timey word. It's an old-timey word, but it's what I learned at Harvard Law School, reason, because all it means is critical thinking skills. Reasoning skills means critical thinking skills. In law school, we were taught to be able to argue either side of a case, because if you were a critical thinker, you could dissect points and use those points to elucidate some measure of an argument that could support your theory. It could be false, it could be a lie, but you wanted to win. And so if you had really good critical thinking skills or better reasoning skills than someone else, even if justice was not on your side, you could still win. If you were organized more effectively, even if justice was not on your side, you could still win. A lot of people could be going and praying against you, but if you had the power, you had the organization, and you had better reasoning or critical thinking skills, which means you had a better plan, you could still win. We need better plans. We need more aggressive plans. And we need people volunteer to draw them up. So, reasoning skills. The reason why reasoning skills are important is because if you have a lot of energy, if you don't know how to specifically apply it, change will not happen. I meet a lot of people in Hollywood, and I call it shotgun energy. They're all over the place. They're talking about how they got a script they want me to do, and they got this, and they're doing this, and no one's ever done anything. It's like the completion argument that Terry was talking about. So, Passion, which is energy, reason, which is critical thinking, and the third and final word in this trilogy is my favorite word in the English language. The etymology of the word courage is cœur. And if you speak French, you know that cœur means heart. So if you combine some measure of energy and you actually critically apply it with some measure of reasoning skills, and then you bring your heart to the table, we can actually see some change. Just by virtue of y'all being here at 10 o'clock on a Friday shows you care, shows you got heart, shows it's already there. I would hope and pray and encourage and want to sit down with you and roll up my sleeves with you, that whatever small aspect of this problem where you want to have impact, I want to help you create a blueprint for it. And help you create a blueprint to garner the resources for it. Then help you move on it. Gather people in the movement to be with you on it. If you need to be a charismatic leader, then step out and do that. If you need to be the person that's behind the scenes, then be the planner behind the scenes. If you need to be the person that's on the side supporting the person in front, then be the person on the side. If you just need to be the person cooking the food for the movement, then cook the food. But the point is, unless you have the recipe, it's not going to work. So as I close, will you just, with a little bit of energy that you may have left, just say this with me. You know, I like using affirmations because many of us don't have people around us that can affirm us all the time. And so a lot of times we have to do it for ourselves. I post up different words that are motivational in nature, and I post them up on the dashboard of my car, or I put them up on my refrigerator, so I make sure I see them subconsciously, because we're all bombarded with so much negative that we need to reinforce the positive sometimes. So this is one of the affirmations I do, and you just say this with me. I will not. There was a few people that had a little energy in their voice, but just give me just I know it's late on a Friday, but just this is almost a test run, you know. Just give me a little bit more energy with this. I will not allow fear to stop me from making the choices and the commitments that I know I should make. I will make a plan, a blueprint, and modify that plan as necessary. I will live from my heart with courage, and in so doing, give others permission to do the same. God bless you all. Have a great weekend. Thank you.